Business requirements relate to the business needs of the product. User requirements relate to the user needs of the product. Similarly, functional requirements relate to the functional needs of the product. Pretty straightforward. Where business and user requirements tend to describe what the system needs to do, we consider functional requirements to state how the system will do it. What and how, by the way, are commonly used mnemonics used by business analysts to help draw a line between user and functional requirements. And that line is not always obvious. Sometimes there ends up being a value judgment made by the BA. Okay, let's say I'll make this one a user requirement and I'll call that one a functional requirement. That kind of thing. And that's fine. Requirements definition is as much an art as a science. Functional requirements, they are often derived from user requirements, but sometimes they can be derived directly from business requirements also. In other words, a functional requirement can have either a user or business requirement as its parent. With that said, I will encourage you to be a little suspicious of functional requirements that derive directly from business requirements. Again, sometimes this is fine, but sometimes it serves as a warning that you might be missing some intermediate user requirements, and that can be important. So let's take a look at some functional requirements, and here's one on the screen. We start off by giving it an ID, and that's FR1. That signifies that it's our first functional requirement. We then have the requirement itself. The report will list beverage names in title case. Is this a good enough requirement? Is it clear, complete, etc.? Yeah, probably yes. But if you wanted to enhance the description to say which report it refers to, that would probably be a good thing. Another question is whether or not the term title case makes sense to readers of the requirement. Yeah, it probably does, but we'll find out when we start having people review the requirements collectively. Okay, next up we have the rationale. Makes it easier to read for management and more professional looking. Okay, good enough. We then have the source. That was Martha again. And we have the parent requirement listed also, which is UR1, and then we spell out UR1 here. The summary report will list each of the beverage products available for sale by the organization. Okay, sounds pretty good. I'm just going to highlight once again the difference between the what's and the how's. In this case, we have the user requirement saying what the system needs to do, and we have the functional requirement saying how the system needs to do it. Okay, so I hope that kind of delineation is clear to you. But look, if it's not, despite my cautioning you, don't get too stressed out about the difference between user and functional requirements. The most important thing is that you get all the requirements and that you state them well, not so much how you categorize them. We might need a few more examples of functional requirements, so I'm putting a couple more here on the screen. And let's take a quick look at those two new requirements. We have FR2 stating the report will list beverages in ascending alphabetical order, and that'll make it easier for management to read. Okay, that also belongs to user requirement UR1. And we have FR3 stating the report will display the unit cost to 2 decimal points, representing dollars and cents. All right. The rationale is that it's critical information for the report. All right. That's also proposed by Martha, and it has as its parent UR2, and UR2 states for each beverage listed, the summary report will display the the unit cost of the beverage. Okay, and we can see how that functional requirement belongs to its parent. All right, so that's it for functional requirements. Before we move on to the last category, let's go ahead and summarize. We've been talking about functional requirements. These are different from business and user requirements, which talk about what the system needs to do. Functional requirements talk about how the system needs to do it. We discussed how functional requirements most often belong to user requirements, but also can belong to business requirements. And then we looked at a bunch of examples, and I hope all of those examples have been helpful to you. One more thing before moving on. Just so you know, we have so far covered the three types of requirements that cover the core functionality of the system. What we've seen so far are the kind of requirements that your stakeholders will just offer to you a lot of the time without your having to ask for them. Now we're going to be moving on to a more subtle class of requirements that you'll have to pay extra special attention to in your projects. And those are non-functional requirements.